University of Maine System has decided to restart the Hutchinson Center sale process. In a press release, they say the decision to rescind the sale of the Belfast facility to the Calvary Chapel Belfast Group was made in response to community feedback. The release states that after review of the two formal appeals, the UMS Vice Chancellor for Finance and Administration agreed with the future of the Hutchinson Center Steering Committee, Waterfall Arts Group, that the evaluation did not consider the full financial impacts of the proposal. The Hutchinson Center currently houses an internet hub that would need to be relocated in the event of a sale. The press release says the future Waterfall Arts Group offered the only creative proposal by suggesting the hub could remain at the center. The Calvary Chapel Belfast and future Waterfall Arts Group have not responded with statements at this time.